Good afternoon. As usual, let me start out by thanking all of you who posted questions. And it's to your credit that this video is possible, so I thank you again. Let's get started. Is the Mafia involved in the escort business in New York? Years ago, there was a case involving the Gambino family, and I read something recently, but I really don't know if there's involvement in present day. Let me just say I'm not crazy about the next question, but here it goes. Were there civilians who were outward afraid of you because they knew who and what you were? If so, how do you handle interactions like that? Okay, I'll put it this way. The fear, if any, is due to the mob. And that not only went for me, but for any member. People feared what you were a part of. With that being said, anyone who knew me knows that I never stuck my chest out and treated civilians and associates with respect. I believed, and still do, in treating people accordingly. How you treat me is what you can expect in return. Are all inducted members welcome at an induction ceremony, or is it only open to captains and members of the administration? Typically, it's not an open forum. For instance, in my ceremony, there were members present, and of course the captains, who were proposing us new members. In no way is it an open door policy, and mainly kept to a small group of people, including all or some of the administration. If a member gets shelved and decides to move to Minnesota to start their own crew and begins earning, which gets noticed, would he be required to start kicking up? Or can he say fuck them without any consequences? A large part of being on the shelf is that you're no longer considered or treated as a member. So I guess if a person is in another state and crews up, he potentially can refuse to hand over money. I think it really depends on the person. The mob's not looking to hunt down shelf members in other states, but then again, you never know. Do you think New York is a much better city since Rudy Giuliani enforced the laws to try to take down the mob? And did other criminal groups profit from the clampdown? New York City, as a result of Giuliani, definitely was more cleaned up, especially on 42nd Street, which had mostly sex shops, etc. In Giuliani's day, especially as a prosecutor, he definitely caused damage to the mob financially. As far as other criminal groups, I honestly don't know if there was any way for them to profit. Did you know or even hear of Peter Pellegrino being a Bonanno member? In all honesty, I used to watch Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares and viewed the episode that he was on. And let me add, the way he acted is not how a friend, an inducted member, should conduct themselves. If he was indeed one, I never met or heard anyone mention him during my time. I know of one or two former Bonanno members who could give a more accurate answer than this. What are your thoughts on Anthony Romanello getting released early from his sentence? Last month, Rom was released, and at 87 years old, I say good for him. What kind of mob presence does Florida have nowadays? To be perfectly honest, Florida is replete with former members and associates and is literally like the movie My Blue Heaven. What's the process to put an associate on record? Is it a formal meeting with the captain and the administration? It's much more simplified than people may think. You could just pass whatever information about the associate to your captain, and what he chooses to do with it is on him. Because when push comes to shove, you put it on record with him. Can you identify father and son Luchese members, Deegan and Butch? According to DeFiti, they were members of Lastarino's crew in the early 90s. And for those unfamiliar, this person's speaking about Joe DeFiti, the former acting boss of the Luchese family, and Frankie Lastarino, who held a captain as well as an administration position. But I wouldn't know, and never heard of these names before. During my time, Frankie was on the shelf, so I really wouldn't know who they were. Do most wise guys always have a lawyer on retainer, or do they get one through their captain? I believe I've answered this in the past. In fact, I know I have. This depends on the person. If it's someone prone to legal trouble, then he'll keep a lawyer on retainer. If Neil Della Croce were to have taken over the Gambino family instead of Paul, how do you think the family would have been different from the way Carl ran it? Who do you think Neil would have put in his administration? And at what point do you think Gotti would have been brought into the administration? Della Croce, in similar fashion to Carlo Gambino, came from the old school, and for the most part, would have ran the family the same, with a more active presence in the street, because that was the type of guy he was. As far as his picks for his administration, I wouldn't know. It's possible at some point he may have gave Gotti a position, but who knows? Do you think because Vicar Musso and Gaspipe came up under different families is the reason they were so violent? I don't believe that to be the case. Violence, or the tendency to become violent, comes from within, not as the result from being around a particular crime family. Would the rule that a guy can't be boss if his father was killed by the mob apply to George Zapola? I read his father was killed by the West Side. Look, it was explained to me that if a family killed the guy's father, they usually wouldn't want him to become the boss of that said family. Georgie Neck is a member of the Luchese family, so this wouldn't apply to him. It seems as though hits continue to take place in Canada, but in New York and other mob cities, they have basically ceased to occur. Do you know why this appears to be the case? Does Canada have less automated surveillance? I really have no idea. In Canada, most of the recent mob-related hits involve bikers as shooters, and this could be a new practice, farming out work to biker gangs. I would assume Canada has up-to-date security cameras installed throughout their cities. They also request dash cam videos from the public whenever investigating a murder, something you usually don't hear too much of here in the United States. Why is there 5 crime families in New York, yet a city like Chicago is run by 1 crime family? Because it's been that way since the days of Al Capone. So I guess they stick to tradition and what works for them. With the making of more money guys, legit guys, is the mob setting itself up for even more failure? If John Doe owns a business and is making money from this legitimate business, but fails to kick up, and the repercussions of being shelved rather than killed, why would he care since he's still making money from his business? Put it this way. Inducting legitimate guys is a smart move financially. However, lowering the bar to that level can and will come back to haunt the mob in the future. Who do you think the FBI will target first? The low-hanging fruit, which is those newly inducted legitimate guys. Your thoughts on the administration and the Luchese family today compared to the Matty Madonna era? I couldn't say. I knew firsthand Matty Madonna's administration, but since I'm no longer a member, I no longer know the dynamics of how the new administration runs their family. Matty's era made many mistakes, and I won't get into details, but the current administration are making mistakes as well. When you started to get more disillusioned by the street life, was there anyone you felt bad for because they lived it the right way and you felt they could be treated like you were? I learned quickly what that life was all about in the very beginning. I think anyone in that life is subject to mistreatment or getting the short end of the stick. I'm curious, what was the hardest day or time you had when you were away in prison? That's easy. Leaving my 2-year-old son and having to tell my mother every time the parole board gave me another 24 months, which went on for an additional 8 years. If you haven't liked this video, please take the time now and hit the like button as it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Also, for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this, or help me to continue making them, you can donate with the Super Thanks icon down below, or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. Let me quickly remind everyone of my blog, especially those of you who still enjoy reading. It can be found at sitdownnews.com and is a paid subscription. And for the final question, if you could do your life over again, with all the knowledge you have today, what, if anything, would you do differently? Although there are so many things I would do different, the very first would be I would invest everything I had into Bitcoin.